Philippe, t'es encore en privé.
Vas-y.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Copernicus MOOC webinar. So it's number 11 today, so just one to go and we will be finished with this second edition of Copernicus. So today our guest is Laurent Props, is Innovation and Business Accelerating Service Responsible at PwC Luxembourg, and is a partner in PwC here. So he will talk about a very interesting topic that is following the last webinar, is about developing your product. So you will have the presentation and then you will have the Q&A session. So after that, so don't hesitate to already post your question. As soon as you have one question, post it on the chat and we will collect all the questions and we will show them at the end during the Q&A session. So enjoy the webinar, and I give the floor to Laurent.
Thank you, Benjamin. Nice to meet you, everyone, and happy to be with you today. It's a great pleasure to share, I would say, a lot of examples, experience, different also contact relationship with people. And so I'm staying at your disposal also after the call just to answer also additional questions. I would like to speak today about how to develop a successful product based on Copernicus data. It's a very, very important topic as of today, and what we see today is really the great momentum around space data, but not only space data, all kind of data to fix some economic, environmental, and societal issues. And I think here we have the opportunity to develop new applications, but in a very complex environment. And complex is from different perspectives, and today we will look at this different perspective. So during this session, I will introduce rapidly, I will say, the objectives. I will speak about defining a value proposition. I will share also with you a concrete example. I will speak about the business model, what kind of business model, and it's not an easy thing because you have multiple hybrid business model. Going to market, scaling up, financing. I will share also a company example with a recent fundraising, and just I will summarize a little bit by lessons learned. But in any case, then we can complete this discussion with your questions. So do not hesitate to raise immediately your question. The objective of this module is to really help you to have, I would say, to build a new product in a secured framework in order to de-risk the product development process, and then also how to select the right business model for you with the objectives really to get more clients, to get also funding if needed, and to get a better outcome for you and your company. The third element will be how to scale up your solution, because today this kind of solution today is immediately from day one a global solution. It's not just about tackling a small market or a domestic market. This will be, we say, from day one you will be in a clear global market. I will immediately show you something very interesting. I will talk about the context in which you will develop such a, I would say, such a product. Here I show you a little bit of, according to our latest research, the state of VC funding, venture capital fundings in climate and earth data generation. Meaning that we have today, and we see today, a big development in climate tech and data generation, I would say, funding. What does it mean? It means that, I would say, for the first time, we see a tipping point, and we see that we can see startups leverage capital well. And then today, with using data, particularly from Copernicus, or using data from other sources, they don't need trillions, they don't need billions to make it successful. This is a very important point, and we see more and more new initiatives from VC fund to invest into this kind of company. So this is clearly important for you to have in mind that you are in a kind of a favorable market trend. The second element is that some conditions are now filled by entrepreneurs, meaning the talent is starting to align with the business model. And when entrepreneurs are able to align talent and business model, investors are lining up. And this is a very important point. We'll see that later on, but this is really a precondition for investors to invest clearly into a startup. Do they have the right talent? Do they have the right business model? And then the third element is that we can see this growth rate, which is highly important over the last year, and even in 2020, this is even above. So we are in a favorable context of climate tech, of data economy, and I will say the context is favorable. So I will now explain a little bit what I see. Also, I'm an observer, I was also an entrepreneur, and I see clearly that you have to manage at the same time when you are creating a new innovative solution, you have to manage at the same time three main conditions and a fourth one. I will start with, I would say, the first most important one, which is to understand the market needs or to anticipate these market needs from a client. Sometimes when you create a new technology or you come with new data to fix a problem, okay, you have to anticipate what could be the market need. And here, this is, in the case of using Copernicus data, this is complex. I recognize that this is very, very complex. I'll give you an example. For instance, today we are monitoring a lot data from space data, CO2 emissions. But we are not monitoring other gases data. So there is here room for providing new solutions with gas emissions, other gas emissions. However, what is the business model? What is the market need for these other gas emissions, different from CO2? So this is what we need to answer for this first challenge. The second challenge is about the technology. Okay, you will source data, you will develop certainly new algorithms, certainly AI applications, algorithm to be able to develop new value out of this Copernicus data. And you need to prove that. And you need to prove the value of this technology in terms of outcomes, in terms of reliability, robustness, explainability. And this is also a big challenge. And then the third element is to immediately think about the monetization model. What should I propose as a model? What should I give potentially free in order to create the momentum, to create the appetite, to create the awareness? What should I ask for payment? And these three elements, these three works, the market needs, the technology, the monetization model, you need to think in parallel from day one about them. And you need to find out the solutions. And then you have a fourth challenge around it, which is your ecosystem. You cannot today, given the complexity of our world, people who are successful have been able to build a very powerful ecosystem around you of partners, of potential providers, suppliers, of potential distributors. So think also clearly about this ecosystem. And this ecosystem will be also a big part of your value proposition. So these four elements will clear through different iterations with successes and failures. At the moment you will fail, you will have to restart and test again. And I would say to be able to build this competitive value proposition and sustainable business model. This is the way to start with clients and to make happy clients. And I will first mention one example. Eodine, which is a French company, which is focused on ocean dynamics. And they developed a specific machine learning platform to enable, I would say, a new understanding of ocean dynamics. And then from this platform, they built new solutions to protect the environment or to drive down the cost for corporates and improve safety. And that's a kind of an interesting model. And here I would like to show you a little bit what is it about. So they are using Copernicus data, and they deliver two main services from this data and from their common platform: a weather routing service called Seaways and a monitoring service called eObserver NRT. The first one is more focused on shipping customers to help them optimize their routes, to save fuel or time and route. And the second one is more oriented towards oil and gas companies, defense departments, and space agencies. And they provide a kind of a monitoring services on key assets and key issues of these target clients. The corporate goal is that their customers use their technology for a different array of needs. And this platform, which has been developed, is sold by the company in a business model which is called product as a service or answer as a service. What it means? It means that, for instance, product as a service allows customer to purchase a desired result rather than the equipment, rather than the platform. So the corporate immediately thought about monetizing the value they create, not the activity, not the product itself, but the value created by the application. So potentially, for instance, on the first service, on Seaways, the company is in a position to invoice the client on fuel savings, thanks to route estimation and optimizations. But everything is prepared from the beginning, being able to track the ship, for instance, and being able to invoice also from a contractual perspective on fuel savings. And what is important is that it's not just about creating new intelligence, new info, but it's also being able to create new value at client level. Another way to look at it is to look at, I would say, also on the same company, the different, I would say, stage of development of applications. For instance, and you can see in dollars below the value of it. You have a first stage, which is, okay, you measure through different data the altimetry of ocean waves, okay? The value of it is quite low, okay? From that, you can derive some products and some forecast on a 2D or 3D model. Okay, this is, you start creating additional value. Then you think about new routing, you think about monitoring, you think about really start core services. Then you significantly then increase the value for your client. And then you translate these core services into specific applications where the client will have an immediate direct benefit. And this is the fourth level where you would really monetize the more and create the more value for your clients. Another way to look at it is to look at, I would say, the evolution of your value proposition over time. And what we have seen in many, many cases is that you will have to go through different stages, different prototypes. It's clear that when you look at the graph, what we can see is that you need to validate your technology and your data to be able to build first your core service. So this is a kind of a precondition. Then you start having a kind of a first value proposition. And here the advice is clearly to onboard as soon as you can, even from day one, some potential clients or potential users, to be able to understand where you can create value for them. And it will require clearly different versions of this value proposition, of this technology, and of these business models. What is interesting is that you need to find out close to you, if possible, so one or two first clients that you know well, which could be your guinea pigs, and then where you can really get a lot of insight from them. This is not a matter of invoicing. You don't care. I think invoicing them could be important, okay, but the value of what you will get from their contribution will be higher from an inside perspective than a financial perspective. And once you have validated with 2 or 3 clients, I would say, your solution, then you can think about this global scaling. And this is very important to have immediately, I would say, also to think about a global case. I will come back to that later. So, around, if you have a project in mind, clearly in the next 2-3 years, you will have to go through this process. The important point, which are very, very key, is to stay focused, to have a big strategic focus, and to stay highly focused on it one, not to be dispersed or diluted. The second point is to capacity and the effort to translate market signals. When you see a potential client, you want to get any kind of his feedback as a positive feedback. No, I think it's good to listen to them very carefully and to understand that some of their body language, some of their signals can be just a good opportunity to rethink the way we consider the value proposition or the model. The agility in responding to change. And that's applies for market needs, technology, and business model. You have to be very clear about also the technology development to be able to capacity to adapt it in a very fast way. Then a very important point is about the market timing assessment. I would say most of the successes and a large majority of the failures are not linked to the quality of the technology. They are linked to the market timing. Sometimes you are too early, so then you burn a lot of cash, a lot of energy before the market, before the clients are ready to buy it, or you are too late. And then the competition is already too big, and then there is no room enough for you. So this is very important, and when looking at this market timing, which require a very important monitoring, you need to adapt resources. You need to adapt the resources, not to burn all the resources in the first year, but to see how to adapt. And in one way to adapt these resources is to think about getting some strategic partners, either from a technology perspective, either from a market perspective, either from a, I would say also resource perspective, and so on. But this market timing, I can tell you, is a very, very complex point, and this is a core factor of success for your application. On my side, for instance, as a personal experience, I know that when I'm thinking about developing an idea, I'm almost 2-3 years in advance of the market. And then I have to be very, very careful to say, oops, I need to be careful in the planning of the resources, because it's good, we are first on the market, but the issue is that, okay, we need to wait 2-3 years before the market takes off. And that's a problem. In the next slide, I would share with you some elements about how to define your value proposition. First, in terms of preparation work, it's very important to define the full mock-up of your solution, and we'll see later on how. And then to identify first the client pains and needs. It's not a problem to a lot of entrepreneurs, engineers, innovators are starting with the technology, and then they they reconcile that technology with some client pains and needs. I think we need to take it in the other way around, meaning we need to first identify the client pains and needs, and then build the technology required to fix these needs. And this element is highly important. It's not natural, but it's a major, I would say, factor of success. Define your solutions value proposition, starting from customers. This is exactly what is the point. And you need to talk to customers first. Before developing anything, go and talk, exchange with people. What are their key problems? What are their key issues? That would help you to frame a market framework and a client need framework. This is highly important, and we'll see in a moment, defining the gains for the client. And it's not always, I would say, obvious. There could be some very specific hidden gains, as well as the pains. Okay, the pains of the client, sometimes they don't want to mention them, or they are quite difficult to discover. And then, once you define the solution promise, the value proposition, okay, it's important to check the market appetite. Because the market appetite is, okay, we need to recheck with the market timing and the market appetite, because that will help you also to influence the business model, or to fine-tune this business model to better value the outcome of your solution. And what is important is to define also what we call a solution attractiveness matrix, which means that why is your solution attractive to some target groups of clients, and could be different for different groups of clients. Is it due to the time to implementation? Is it due to the quality of data? Is it due to the robustness? Is it due to the cost of operation? Why your solutions is attractive for clients? And then from that, you can start to define your development specifications. The main mistake we see is that people start immediately with, I would say, number 4, before doing 1, 2, 3. And going immediately to 4 clearly will be a barrier for success later on. Here is the value proposition canvas. And this is exactly also what we use internally, for instance, for us or for me when we are creating new business, because it's a good framework which evolve. It's an evolving framework, okay? So on one side, you have your value proposition, and on the other side, you have your customer profiles. And as we said, it's important to start with the customer profile, to understand the gains, the pains, the customer job, meaning what he has to do in his day-to-day job, okay? And what do you bring with your value proposition? What do you solve? okay, through your product and service. How do you solve that? And here I would like to share with you a concrete example of an application also using Copernicus data, which has been developed for fire prevention. So if we look at the client jobs on the right side, so for instance, you have identified three types of clients: municipalities, citizens, and insurance. So municipalities, their job is to clean the areas, is to ensure the security, is to inform the population, for instance. On citizens, clearly, the role of citizens, he has to have a key access to information, to stay informed, to be prepared, to clean also their own houses. And then also insurance companies, they have to do in their job a regular assessment of the risk of a situation, and I would say monitor and fix also the problems. From a client, what could be the gain about this fire prevention application? It's about having a daily report about the danger. It's about cancel risky activities like barbecues when you have a big heat, or properly ensure houses with the right pricing, depending on the actual risk, and minimize fire damage in heat waves. So these are some of the gains, as an example, which could be used from a customer profile. And then if you look as an example on your site, on your value proposition. So for instance, your product on the left will deliver daily report on fire danger rating. The product will provide AI-based solutions to help reduce the risk of fire by identifying areas that need to be cleaned up to create firewalls, for instance, or inform citizens about good practices. So these are the functions of the products. And clearly you can see that this will create some gains. So real-time information. Municipalities will be able also to anticipate the hottest periods, which have to allow them to minimize possible damage, for instance. Or insurance companies will be able to better measure and assess the price of the insurance premium. So mapping these elements also is a very important way to fine-tune your value proposition and to explain it also in a communication, in marketing to the different stakeholders. So the Canvas business model that I will show you in an instant, which is here, you can see there, and some of you certainly know it, is also very interesting because it's easy to answer. You can progressively fill in, but is, I would say, a very good framework to share also with other people and challenge it. I come back to it. Key activities. What is important is to fulfill all activities to be performed by each stakeholders. And this has to be defined properly as it will impact clearly the resource model and the cost structure. So the key activities of your innovation, okay, this is the scope of these activities has to be defined very well. The value proposition. I think we spoke about it, and the value proposition could be composed of many things. Could be composed about, I would say, the quality of data, the robustness of data. Could be composed about the quality of the application that you use, the fact that it's real time. Could be composed about the design. Could be composed about the visualization tools. Could be composed about also we say time. I would say time to market, meaning, for instance, limited time to implement your solution or to access your solution. So here, this value proposition is very important to make it very real and concrete. Customer relationships, what do we understand by that? We understand the relationship model. Is it direct or indirect, or through different channels? And this is a very important choice because if you take a direct channel, that will have a very strong impact and additional cost on your cost and resource model. If you saw an indirect one through partners, you will be less in control of our customers, but in any case, you benefit from their own channels with lower need of resources. Customer segments. Very important to target precisely 2, 3, not more, customer segments first to address. Could be by categories of company, could be by sectors, but the more precise, the better. And then the cost structure. What will be the cost structure? What are the core activities that you absolutely need as internal resources that you cannot outsource? Or the costs which need to be, I would say, permanent and not variable. So these are very important things to discuss, and also look at the different options with potential partnerships, which could have a huge impact on your business plan. And then the revenue streams. Which are the different revenue streams that you plan? You might have different ones. It could be clearly a price for your... If you develop a new AI platform, for instance, you can develop some specific applications derived from the AI applications, or you can also propose your AI platform as a white label platform, for instance, to corporates. So in that case, you would have 2 revenue streams. So this is also very important to think from day one about this revenue stream. So this is I would say, the overall Canvas business model. And again, when we do it on our side, for instance, on some new product, new innovations, we do not fulfill all the things at the same time. We take some time to think and to fine-tune. What I will speak now is about the business model. And this is highly, highly important. And then it's very important to think about the business model and to think also about the application that you will develop and the value that you will create at the client level. For instance, the value that you will create will be, for instance, in terms of a report that will provide intelligence, or will be, for instance, linked to what you have seen in the previous example, for instance, an outcome on the cost of a company. So here the point is to discuss what kind of revenues do we need. Do we want a recurring revenues versus non-recurring? Today, clearly, there is a big trend and several big advantages on focusing on recurring sales of products, which means that these sales are expected to continue in the future. Okay, the client is not going to stop to buy your service, but it means that you will get better cash and profit projections by developing a recurring model. The key benefits for you is the valuation of your company. We have seen over the last 18 months that companies with a significant part of their revenues as recurring revenues as a multiplier of 5 of their total revenue. So that's a kind of average. And then they have a better sales visibility. For your clients also, this is a benefit because it helps also to plan. It generally brings a lower entry fee for your solution. It's a cost visibility and it's generally an OPEX. So this is easier to buy. And what is important also is to try to assess the value of your business model. So, for instance, if we take a recurring business model, what is important? There are 4 dimensions important, 4 variables important into the business model. The first one is, what is the total annual recurring revenue of your company? Which means it gives an indication about the size of your business. The second indicator is about the growth rate. It means that if the growth rate is good, you are right on the market, it's good, right on time. And then it means also that you have a good quality in terms of go-to-market. Then the third element, third variable, is the net revenue retention, which indicate the quality of your product. So the net revenue retention is you measure how many clients left you. And if you have a very low turnover of client, it means that your quality of product or service is very good. And then the gross margin, which I would say clearly measure the profitability of your business. So you can value, I would say, your business model by looking at these 4 variables. I can tell you, investors will do it. And your business will be valued according to these variables. Then, just mentioning some types of recurring business models. We have, for instance, auto-renewal subscriptions, which is mainly used in software or insurance. Okay, you buy a license, and then if you don't stop it, then it's again the same for next year. You have big money subscriptions, so it's a big amount, more than 100K or 200K, like for instance, like Bloomberg terminals, where you access to a massive amount of information, real-time info, massive amount of reports. So you have no choice. Okay, it's a specific model. You are closed with that model, but it's a big one. The traditional renewable subscription, okay, like a monthly fee. Another model, which is also a recurring business model, more for hardware, I would say, which is about native consumables like the Nespresso. Okay, you have to buy more or less the consumables produced by the hardware producers. And then you might have also some long-term contract. We can see that for, I would say, also things which require a long investment or long-term investment. This is something to look at. Could be interesting to have a long-term contract, because that could help also to plan well the resources, to plan well also the investment, and it's highly appreciated by investors. And the freemium model, which has to be then converted into a recurring business model with, I would say, a specific percentage of potential clients. And here, what is important to understand is that you have clearly other type of business model that you can mix, okay? You can have, for instance, also what you have seen in the case of Odin. For instance, you might have a revenue sharing business model. You can say, I help you to save some fuel consumption, then I take a percentage of success on it. Or you can also facilitate, for instance, if you have several products, you can facilitate the add-on or the cross-selling. The add-on means that you sell really and you propose first at a basic entry fee a minimum product, and then you put a lot of add-ons. Or cross-selling, you put 2 lines of product and then you put a specific advantage for a cross-selling. At the same time, you have also the, I would say, you can value clearly the pay-per-use. which could be also to some extent interesting in some cases. So you can see that you have multiple variations of a business model, and what is important is to make sure that you assess the right one with different options and different cases. And this has to be done when you are also immediately developing your solution and your market, your go-to-market approach. A specific point on the scaling up of a solution. I think that today, clearly, when you are talking about space data, societal issues, climate issues, and others, we are talking about global solutions. Okay, but the issue is that for you, you are a small company, entrepreneur, you are alone, you are coming from a country. It's very difficult to appear immediately as a global case. So you need to structure your company as from day one a company which could address global markets. And when you will meet investors, I think that will be important, that it's a global case, it's a global opportunity, but it's clear that in your roadmap, you will first target some markets, some verticals with some specific geographies, but okay, you have this global case in mind. It's already pre-planned in your strategy. And the advantage of it that you can mention, it's clearly that diversifying the revenue streams, meaning that you can accelerate the growth, you can de-risk also in case of a problem in a country or in a vertical, economies of scales, put also a pricing, define also pricing if you're on a very innovative model, attract talent, because talent are interested by global cases. They are not interested by local, regional companies. And then see how to optimize the cost structure with a global setup, because clearly you can see, you can get some access to talents with a better cost structure in different territories. Rapidly, the market-driven approach, which is highly important in you. So one of the key challenges in your go-to-market approach is to define what is the first right market to enter. And this is one of the most difficult tasks, okay? And this requires from your side and from your potential advisor a key.
Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Laurent, we hear you.
Okay.
Yes, it was just a few seconds of interruption, but so you can go on. Thank you.
So on the market approach, entering the key market is highly important, and it requires specific analysis. You might need to build specific partnerships to enter these markets, and then build specific delivery capacity. And this is highly important to make sure that you have a very effective go-to-market approach. On the market timing, and that's also a very important point, you will have to adapt your capacities between the corporate structure on your capacity to deliver your technology and to deliver your clients, and then in line with the revenue growth of your companies. So you have to be careful about the balance between both. If you are overstructured, overstaffed, then you will burn cash very rapidly. If you are understaffed, understructured, then you will all lose client rapidly because you will not be able to deliver the client. So this is a very important point to be able to, I would say, balance that. It's a very strong point of attention to keep, I would say, when looking at the monitoring of the development of your product, service, value proposition, and monitoring the market timing. And rapidly, what should your company get ready for funding? And this will be a very important case before we show the last example. We can see a precise market strategy. As I said, go to market, which is the market that you will enter first, which is the second market you will enter first. What is important also to present to companies is to investors, is the detailed overview of a state-of-art technology and data benchmark and the different form of competitions. You don't hide competition. In many cases, in a large majority, we see a lot of startups coming without a view on the competition, without a clear view on the competition. And they think that they are alone, but there are a lot of indirect competition or close competition. So this is, I would say, a specific exercise which requires, I would say, a very open-minded approach. Then the third element is the skills. How to align the skills and the partnerships with the strategy. For instance, looking at the CTO of your company is a core element because you need a CTO which has, I would say, experience in building new generation of platforms. Someone who built platforms 15 years ago does not perhaps have the right expertise. You need to find out the person who have really the right latest expertise to be credible in front of fund advisors, fund investors. And then the last point is about business model and financial strategy. So a business model will be, again, aligned with the team, aligned with the strategy. And this has, I would say, a key importance for potential investors. When you're able to build the four elements together, to align four elements, then you have a good chance to be funded. And then I would like, as a final element, just to show you in a few minutes, this example of a company, OpNet. And you can see that they use Copernicus data. It's been created in 2018. They have been able to, I would say, develop a platform which is named Tsar, which is an AI platform. And then they have created clearly also new data visualization tool, which are on the right. So what are they doing? They are creating what they call planet intelligence. So clearly they are monitoring, I would say, forests. They are monitoring, I would say, all the vegetations. And then they are targeting electric utilities for risk of wildfire and power outages. Forest industry to improve sustainability and efficiency. Insurance in order to help them to better assess the risk and impact of climate events. And then reforestations and deforestations to check the effect and impact of reforestation. So they clearly identified four types of client segments, and for which they can provide real-time information, predictive models, and actionable. And this is where I think the value could be created. Being real-time and predictive, okay, it's okay, but the company does not know yet to do. Your client will not know what to do with this type of information. You need to develop actionable solutions. And this is where you create value. And for instance, in that case, actionable means it's a priority tracker. So it gives you a set of priorities to act based on estimated likelihood and potential consequences. And then risk tracker, okay, based on vegetation data layers combined with wire zone or border zone. So then the risk identification is provided. So the actionable elements in your value proposition is a core element of success today for a successful monetization. And just to finish, this example, we can see that clearly. So I will be very short on it, but they just get last month 1.7 million seed fund. And then they got funded by Pale Blue Dot Fund, Powerhouse Ventures, and Techstars, meaning that they were able to build a consortium of investors around them and to build their ecosystem. And that's very interesting. So the message here is also look at the investor ecosystem, look at the new players, the newcomers, because Pale Blue Dot was created very recently in June this year. Okay, and they are ready to invest into this new generation of applications. Then lessons learned for fundraising. So first is to maximize the use of financing of different non-dilutive financing resources. You might have access to different grants or clients. I would say money. These are the first to use. Then targeting investor category according to corporate maturity. If you are starting in a thing, go with high net worth individuals, go with business angels. Then VCs will be for phase A or phase B. Third element, don't go alone. Be assisted by former professionals, by people of industries, by former investors, to help you, because you will not be able to run a fundraising and at the same time develop your own solutions and client approach. Adapt to post-COVID context. In your case, it could be very interesting, and I think there will be major favorable developments for this industry. Look at international market perspective, because potentially your investors will come from the US, from China, from everywhere. So you need to be able to understand the global market. Align skills, technology, and business model. We spoke about it, but it's highly, highly important. And then are you in a position to present a strong ecosystem of partners to these investors? And I think that's important. Potentially universities, potentially suppliers, potentially distributors, and we see many. For instance, in our case as PwC, we work a lot with many startups because we help them to enter into some clients, corporates. We use their technologies, and it's a very nice partnership. In a summary, important to develop this strong value proposition with the right business model. Identify as soon as you can strategic partners that will help you also to identify potential clients. Assess the market timing and adapt resources. And then clearly everywhere, every time, it's about client, client, client. The technology will represent perhaps 25%, 1/3 of a problem. But I would say client is, I would say, at least more than 50, 60% of a problem. So this is where to start, and this is the way to go. So I've been a little bit late, but I think we have quite a set of time for questions.
So I will select some question, and as I get one, I will show it on the screen. So don't be shy. You can ask as many questions as you want. we have still time for it. Okay, so let's start.
Yes, sure. I will.
So it's a commercial question.
Contact me on laurent.props@pwc.com, and I will send you my ebook copy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I think the common point between research and a business plan, a private or corporate business plan, is that you want to solve a problem. You have to solve a problem. And I think if you want to plan research tomorrow, it's clear that you need to identify, I would say, a clear problem. You need to identify who are the stakeholders of this problem and what will be the benefit of the research and the findings. For a business plan, the business plan is, I think, more sophisticated because it's evolving, and then you might have different clients. You don't have one budget only from a donor. You're a multitude of potential clients. But I would think about describing well the problem, and will help you also to define a strong value proposition for your research plan. Yeah, okay. The ecosystem. The ecosystem is highly, highly important. So, which are the stakeholders that you have in your ecosystems? You have governments, and particularly in this kind of business, this is highly important to consider governments, which could split between, I would say, ministries of, I would say, agriculture, for instance, in a related vertical of your business, which could be split also with, for instance, the regulators. Okay, the regulators, which to some extent you might need some authorization, so you have to consider the government as a regulator. So the government is a key part of the ecosystem. You have also, I would say, the research institutions as part of the ecosystems, because the research could provide you with a set of assets, and very important to look at who do you partner with to get, I would say, this access and resources. Same with universities, because they can provide you with access of talents, doctorates, and so on, thesis, which could be of high interest for your business. Another type of partners in the ecosystems are big corporates, because they can accelerate your development. They could be also investors into your startup, into your venture, and they are important. Then you are all the tech providers. technology providers. So the AI software providers, for instance, or the NVIDIA, for instance, just to mention an example as a computer power. So these stakeholders are important to consider because you can manage, get some deals with them, and that could facilitate your development. So these are some elements of the ecosystem, but I think this ecosystem will be enriched along your journey, and being able to propose an international ecosystem would be a very strong asset for your company. Yeah, in some cases, there are some types of innovation by business where you have to create the market because the market does not exist. And this is close to research planning because you have to discover the unknown. But in some cases, you create something which might answer a problem, and you create your own market. And to some extent, there are some analogies. It's not perhaps the same as in research planning, but at least clearly you want to satisfy uncover needs, or you want to create a demand. So there are some analogies, I would say. Yeah, that's a good example. And blockchain was developed as a technology, and then now people are looking on how to use blockchain for a solution and looking for a problem to fix. I think, yeah, I agree. It's blockchain is clearly that kind of example. The first thing I would check would be the client response. How did you develop your value proposition with potential clients? What was their response? How did they react? Because that's really the core point. We saw too many times too many products developed without any potential client consultation. And then at the end of the process, nobody wants it. The idea might be good, but the way developing a product today without talking to potential clients early in the process is a big, big risk. Can you go down because I don't see the rest of the question? So I assume that this is okay. This is about the what percentage of resources should be allocated to the free activities?
Yeah,
developing the market first. As I said, I think it depends on the investment cost on the technology. But in any case, the first things in the different steps I've shown, the first thing is to really concentrate on the market problems before developing the specifications of your solution. So potentially the market specification will not be so costly because potentially that will be perhaps around, I don't know, 50K, 60K in terms of, could take 6 months to develop really the market understanding. Then you will develop the specifications of your technology. Then you will have a technology development, collection of data, testing with different variations, different tests. The technology development might be 5, 10 millions or maybe 1 million. Okay, so in terms of proportion, there is no specific benchmark for that. However, the 3 steps have to be done, whatever the size of each of the steps. And the staffing, I would say the staffing and the team are your core assets. So these are the things where the investor will look first at your team and will say, is this team capable of managing turbulent times, being able to really to be, is the team resilient to failures? Is the team resilient to market issues or market failures? And would the team could react, could adapt, is agile enough to adapt the business model if needed? So the team is highly important. Yeah. What means real-time using Earth observation? This means it's ambitious. Yeah. And you have to also, in your case, you have to take into consideration what will be the next, or what will be the new constellations, the new low orbit constellations, because the new low orbit constellations will be able to distribute, I would say, in a more real time data and applications. And that will be what already, for instance, SpaceX did, and what is also the plan for the new EU constellation to be as a core strategic project. And we will perhaps not be in a real time way, but very close to it. So this is also important for you here to look at the next big investments from EU, for instance, or from others, because these new constellations will be able to provide, I would say, new capabilities and new services and new data for sure. I agree with you, but when talking to investors, this is not their mindset. I think they integrate this holistic vision. I would not say decision process, but more vision into the venture fund strategy, for instance, like climate tech, for instance. So they integrate this holistic decision, but then a holistic vision, but then they are looking at how you, with your product, with your team, with your business model, you are able to answer this problem or specific problem from the climate tech issues, for instance. So and at this stage, it's looked very one by one, individually, product by product. I don't think that it's a competition. When I talked about the ecosystem, this is exactly the point. I think you might have some very, very good resources of universities for specific points. Also, you might have individual entrepreneurs. Perhaps would be interesting to look at teaming up in some cases, perhaps not. But I've seen some very good startups done by a team of 2 or 3. One came from the corporate, one came from startups, one came from the academia, and I think that it's not about. It's so complex that no one is able to do that alone today. You need a team, and at least as a one-man show. No way will fund, I would say, one-man show today. You need to have a strong team and strong capability to really have an impact. Yeah, this is a core. This is a core element. So you have a platform with geospatial data processing, and you have different type of customers with different needs, and then you came up with a kind of tailored services on demand, and then you are not able to develop, I would say, common project. It's clear that at the beginning, early stage, you can really get some specific projects funding, but you have to keep in mind and the fact that to have a common verticals by industry for those who are the most interesting for you, because I don't know any investor who will project a company which is working on a special projects model. They will say no. They want to have a replicable model. They want to have, I would say, capacity to scale. And in that case, with specific project model, you are not able to scale. Then you are a service company, like PwC, for instance. Well, it's a model. You are a service company where you do a tailored solution for each client. And so industrialization is not possible. So when you are not a tech company, but you are a service company. And it's totally different positioning and totally different, I would say, clearly business model. So if you can think about focusing more, you might have to give up some customers and focus more on some customers on the same verticals, same kind of needs in order to industrialize your solution and to create more value for them. It's a good question. I'm looking at if I have examples. I think I have one example of a corporate in. I think it's not anymore startups, but it's for those who know, this is the financial spin-off, the fintech of Alibaba Group. This is called Ant Financials, and Ant Financial has today They have been created 10, 12 years ago. They have today close to 1 billion customers, and everything is managed with data. It's totally industrialized, totally processed, totally managed with data. And they provide loans to Chinese people. So retailers, small retailers of Chinese peoples. Their key figures is what they called 310. So 3 seconds is the time for someone, for a retailer, for instance, or Chinese person, to submit an application for a loan. 3 seconds. 1 is 1 second, so the time for processing the application by the system. And 0 is the number of manual interventions. So I think this is an example of data. This is an example of a company in which everything is based on data and is totally automatized. So you can see, compared to the previous questions, how far automatization could be for some, I would say, core applications. So, okay, this is the only example I have in mind now, which is, and it was supposed to be the largest IPO 1 month ago, and then it was stopped by the regimes. I think I already covered this one. I think if it's just an argument of price, if I understand well the question, if a small business is just coming up with an argument of price, in a very matured market, where very matured, very large market, where the business, the service is not critical for the client, and the business service is also not critical from a strategic perspective, but the client is looking at cost, yeah, it could work. It could work. Because today corporates are very, very price sensitive, and if you could buy something 10% less, they will do that. If it's, I would say, if it's material enough, okay? So this could be a strategy, but again, that will be for a short period of time, because rapidly someone else will come with a lower price and so on. So this is important to not only have price as a value proposition. Fully agree. The complexity is in making it simple for the end user or for your client. And I think here today, what we see also about Earth observation applications and the new developments with the development of what we call digital twin Earth, the challenge is there. It will be more and more complex from a data collection, from data fusion, algorithm, but at the end, it should be much more simple for the user. And and I fully agree, but this complexity is just on the production side, on the design side, but for the user, simplicity is a core element of the value proposition. Fully agree.
As the list, but yes, I think it was our last for today. So
Is there any other question?
yeah, I'm waiting. So if you second. Oh, no. So yeah, you have also. Thanks coming on. Great. Thanks for your input and knowledge. So, okay. So I think that will be all for today. So thank you everybody for assisting this webinar, and yeah, we hope to see you next week for the last edition, the last webinar, the second edition of Copernicus MOOC. Yeah, so you will find the recording of this webinar on the MOOC, on Moodle. So don't hesitate if you want to see. If you missed the beginning, you can still watch it on the MOOC website.